Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SpudSmart Roundtable Series webinar. My name is Ashley Robinson, and I'm the editor of SpudSmart. Today, I'll be serving as your host for this webinar. Today's theme is the potato seed certification process. And first off, I'd just like to take a quick minute to thank BASF and McCain for partnering with us on this Roundtable Series webinar. Today's speakers are Christopher Dunbar, who is a potato program specialist with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and Jake Hoagland, who is a seed potato grower with Hoagland Farms in Millet, Alberta. Thank you both for taking part today. And our agenda for today's webinar will be that first off, you're going to learn some stuff about the tests that seed potatoes are required to go through here in Canada, including handling standards seed growers must follow and how long seed production takes. During the presentation, you'll likely have some questions for our speakers. Please type these into the chat box at any time during the webinar, and we'll address them during the question and answer session after the presentations. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available at spudsmart.com following this live event. Our first presenter is Christopher Dunbar, who is a potato program specialist with CFIA. Christopher has worked in the potato industry for over 25 years. He attended the Nova Scotia Agricultural College and then received a Master of Science degree from Dalhousie University in 1997, where he studied potato tuber formation. Following university, he worked for 13 years as a manager on a farm which produced high-generation seed potatoes for the P.E.I. Potato Board. After a 2-year stint as an agronomist and researcher at FoodTrust of P.E.I., Christopher joined the CFIA in 2007 as an inspector. He then worked his way up to his current position as Program and Policy Development in Plant Health, where he handles quarantine pests for potatoes. Christopher spends his spare time on the river with his spouse and kids and working in his greenhouse and orchard. He also writes a monthly column on gardening for a local PEI food magazine. Take it away, please, Christopher.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, I've got a few slides here on the seed potato program for CFIA. Excuse me. I'll start with just a little bit about what the CFIA does. We're the regulator in Canada, and what we're concerned about is Canada's food supply. So, and of course, the food supply is dependent upon plant and animals. So we're involved, of course, in how those are produced as well, because that's what the food comes from. So there's 185 field offices across Canada. So we do have a broad presence for sure. So the seed potato certification program, we administer that under the authority of the Seeds Act and Seeds regulations. It's been around for a long time. It actually started in 1914. It's a nationally administered program. It's the same across the country. And there's standards regarding purity, tuber size, slot integrity, packaging, container identification, and of course, pests and diseases. That's probably the most important thing. So yeah, why do we have a certification program? The biggest part is in food security, because the most important, in order to have a productive crop, you need control diseases. So in particular, there was one that was quite bad in the 60s, bacterial ring rot. The certification system is in place to try and control those diseases. And ring rot, fortunately, as an example, is quite rare now. So it works. It's also an important driver, domestic trade and export verification. There needs to be some oversight in maintaining a certain level of disease in a certain level of quality in the seed stocks, minimizing disease. So it facilitates trade, and that there's standards that need to be met. Also, of course, protects the plant resource base. Post-entry quarantine is another aspect. It's actually not directly related to, or not direct part of the seed certification program, but it's the precursor. So if there's potato material coming from overseas, it must go through that program. So there's a continuum of activities before the seed gets to your farm and after it leaves. It's not just there's a few things that it's really a constant steps. So there's 7 field generations in our the seed potato system, and the way it works is that there essentially zero disease material comes in at the start. It's grown in the greenhouse in tissue culture, and there's a certain number of generations that material is propagated and increased in volume, and at the end, it exits the system. Potatoes are vegetatively propagated, so if plants get diseased, they're going to stay diseased until so you have a constant. It's each year in the field you get more disease, so that's why we want to minimize or limit the number of years it's in the system. I would also add that each year there's each class there's standards, and if a seed lot, say it's in the elite 1 and does not meet the elite 1 standards, it's downclassed to the standard that it does meet. So 7 field generations is the maximum. So the activities, there's a number of key activities. The first step is the grower applies for crop inspection, and they would provide some documentation. There's actually an application form that they would need to provide, and there needs to be some laboratory testing. So that's kind of the first step in the season. During the summer, at least 2 times, usually July and August, there'll be 2 inspections. And this is in the field. A minimum of 2 inspections. The seeds regs part 2 indicate a minimum of 2, so that there could be more. In addition to those 2 field inspections, there's harvest or storage inspections, and the primary purpose of those is verification of lot integrity, where the different lots stored. And we also do some tuber inspections at the shipping point related to issuance of tags and movement certificate and to verify the grade. So we control the movement. If things aren't up to grade, then we don't issue the document, the tag or the movement certificate. So in order to be eligible and in order for a CFIA to accept your application, you need to provide some documents. For each lot that was grown on the farm, it needs to have BRR testing. Even if there's no seed brought into the farm or sold from the farm, there still needs to be a minimum of 2 lots tested for bacterial ring rot. And all purchased seed must also be tested. If there's a new grower, before they even get seed on their farm, a new grower would be required to do a full cleanup under CFIA supervision, because BRR is endemic to Canada. So we will make sure before you bring in something to enter the seed system, the farm is cleaned up. And it's important also that all potato crops are listed on the application, because you cannot grow anything, you cannot plant anything lower than foundation class. A couple of slides on just on nuclear stock production. This shows on the left is some potato plants that are grown in the lab. That's essentially the starting point. In the system, there's zero disease. On the slide on the right, or the picture on the right, shows those plants being planted in a nuclear greenhouse. It's also a protected environment, so those will grow for a season, and they'll be harvested as mini tubers. And those mini tubers then go to the field the next year. But both of these are considered nuclear stock class. This shows some of the biosecurity elements for nuclear stock production. It needs to be an insect-proof environment. So There's an inspection, and the greenhouse has to be free from not allow insects present, so you need to monitor for that. They have screened in double entry door, and of course footwear needs to be disinfected. That needs to be disinfected before anyone enters the facility. These are the viruses that the nuclear stock material is tested for. There's 8 of them there. There's a number of requirements that are met, and as Jake will get into a little bit, there's a whole set of work regarding nuclear stock production. So, but essentially, when you're starting, you have to have a test for a number of diseases, and it has to be disease free, essentially. Then into crop inspection, there is lab tests that's part of some part of the business, of course, but at current, it's all visual inspection. So we go in and we look at a certain number of plants, and there's looking for various blackleg viruses, foreign. There's certain diseases and defects that we're looking for. So we'll do an inspection, and then 20 to 30 days later do another inspection. And of course, in between fields and farms, we follow good sanitation program. Yeah, biosecurity at the farm, you want to prevent certainly soil. You don't want to carry from a disease or anything from one farm or one field to another. So it's important to follow use good biosecurity, which of course all seed farms do. So it's certainly an important principle, because you don't want to bring, if there's no disease there, and it can be brought in by humans or equipment, you want to prevent that. Crop inspection will be refused if you plant anything that's certified or non-seed on your farm, we will not accept your application. Or if there's potatoes planted within 2 years of where BRR occurred. So it's certainly important that the bacteria ring rot, that there's freedom from that. So there's a 2-year requirement. And of course, you can't have had any quarantine pests that's been detected. If there's inadequate separation, you make sure you separate your non-seed and your seed. I would say you can grow non-seed on a seed farm as long as you plant seed. You don't have to enter it for certification, but it has to be eligible to be entered if you wanted to. Crop damage, which impedes visual inspection. If there was damage, Colorado damage or other damage, we have to be able to inspect the crop. So if we can't inspect the crop, then of course we can't certify. And if there's any equipment exposed to bacterial ring rot or quarantine pests, that would be grounds for refusing crop inspection. This chart just shows a little bit of the different standards for the top row there, nuclear pre-elite. Those are the different classes, and the vertical column there on the left, that shows what the different diseases are and what the tolerances are. And as you see, as you move to the right of the table, you get lower class, the tolerance is higher. The seed potato certification number, this is a key part of the system, because it's all about traceability. And each and every crop in Canada every year in seed potatoes has a unique number. And the numbers, each part of the number means something. So the first 4 digits are the crop year. Then the next digit is the province that it comes from. The next 2 digits are the district within the province. This 4-digit number here is the grower number. And 06006 in this case is the field or the lot number on the farm unit. So there's a lot of information that's gained from this certification program or this certification number, and it's very important to have it. And just I'll show you, for example, this is just a fictitious example, but if you look at, we track each number, the certification each year of each seed lot. So here you can find out if there was a problem, let's say you've got foundation seed here, you can look to where it was grown the previous year, 2 previous years, 3, 4, and so on, all the way up to the top. And if you find out where the problem is, it helps to control where the issue might be. Like if we have a disease outbreak, we go back and we look, okay, who planted that specific certification number, and check that to see if it's just related to seed or is it farm related, and so on. So it's a really important part of the traceability part of seed certification. And just before shipping point, there's inspections for domestic and export. I would say the domestic inspections are more to verify. They're not a mandatory inspection. However, for export, it is mandatory. So, and they need to meet the lot needs to meet the inspection grade standard. Again, here this is the standard for tuber inspection. Earlier I talked about standards, that was for field inspection. So there's oversight in the field, and then there's oversight at the shipping point. So, and there's tolerances at all of those. Okay. Oh yeah, and just a quick note: the seed potato inspectors. There's a school in Ontario, and so they're trained on a national basis. There's also regional training, but having the national training helps in consistency, and they're trained in regulated pests and quarantine pests. There's zero tolerance for bacterial ring rot, and we not every year, but often there is investigations in ring rot, and we would do trace investigations and testing to determine where did the infection come from? Is it on farm or is it from another farm? And if there is a find, then there needs to be cleaning and disinfection under our supervision, under inspector, and restrictions on land use. This is just a quick picture of some of the documents that we issue to allow movement. On the left is the different types of seed potato tags. They're not used so much now, maybe still in nuclear stock production, but not for the others, not that much. But what's more typical is a bulk movement certificate when everything goes is in a truckload. Seed potato hectares by province, as this is just a little bit on how much production we have per year. It varies around 22,000 hectares. That's the 5-year average there, 21,954. And well, just about every province. And Nova Scotia is a little small, but certainly there's a lot of seed potato production across the country every year. That's 22,000 hectares that have to be inspected twice during the growing season. Yeah, and I guess that's the end of my presentation. Over to you, Jake, I guess, or Ashley.
Thanks so much, Christopher. You did a great job. So please remember, if anyone wants to ask any questions to Christopher or to Jake coming up, make sure to type them into the chat box, and we will answer those in the question and answer session after Jake's presentation. Our next presenter is Jake Hoagland, who is a seed potato grower at Hoagland Farms in Alberta. Hoagland Farms is a family farm with Jake and his father working together. They grow 380 acres of seed potatoes and a small amount of grain. The Hoaglands grow approximately 30 varieties and 90 lots of potatoes, from the mini tuber stage to shipping E1, E2, or E3. The Hoaglands have been growing potatoes near millet since 1998. Before that, they grew seed potatoes in the Netherlands for over 40 years. Jake moved to Canada in 1996, where he first worked on a seed potato farm near Edmonton. And he's the chairman of the Edmonton Potato Growers and a longtime board member of the Seed Potato Committee for the Potato Growers of Alberta. He is married with one child and enjoys farming and kart racing. Take it away, please, Jake.
Thank you, Ashley. As Ashley said, I'm Jake Oakland. I farm in Alberta. We are quite specialized in our higher generation seed potatoes. So basically follows up to what Chris was saying, that all the regulations we have to go through. Just doing a little brief presentation on what our farm is about and what we do. So we grow about 380 acres of potatoes, from pre-elite class to E3 class, actually. Our greenhouses are done by my sister, which is a quarter mile up the road. They produce the mini tubers for us. We plant about 120,000 mini tubers per year to do our full crop. We're quite specialized in the higher generation, so we also have a lot of varieties. I'm sure a lot of you that are on right now are like, holy crap, that's a lot, and it is. We grow 30 varieties and over 90 lots. So we do have some main varieties that we use is Satina, Gold Rush, Ivory Russet, Columba. Then we got some smaller varieties like Elmo, Orchestra, Mozart, Fabla. All those varieties mainly come from European breeding companies. I every year go to the Netherlands, where the European breeding companies have the presentation of the new varieties. That's for us a way to go and check what's coming up. Not every variety works in every area. It takes a long time to bring a variety in. For people that don't know, on average, it will take about 3 years to bring a variety over from Holland and have it go on to quarantine. By the time it's in our greenhouse and by the time we have a mini tuber, it's mostly about 3 years. So it's a long process. We always really try to find something that, of course, fits in our market here in North America. Having said that, every area is different too. If you're in P.E.I. or Vancouver Island or California, Florida, you name it, every variety performs differently under different conditions. It's one of the reasons why we have so many varieties, and we're always trying something new. All our potatoes are being sold by Edmonton Potato Growers and HFPC Americas, which is located in P.E.I. and Edmonton Potato Growers here in Edmonton. So yeah, like I said, I visited a lot of companies to come up with newer varieties to bring into North America. What we look for a lot is of course, shape. Yield is a big deal, of course. And I think the bigger issue coming up more is disease resistance. I think in Europe we're a little bit ahead with some of the resistances in diseases, especially in nematodes. Not that we have any problems here, at least not for sure not in Canada much of nematode issues, but I do think in the US at certain places it's becoming more and more an issue, especially when rotations are very tight. So in the spring, like I said, my sister and brother-in-law, they're producing our mini tubers. They have their own facility. Everything is done completely separately from our farm. They do have their own cooler where they store the potatoes in. They got 3 greenhouses where they grow 2 crops per season. The first crop usually goes in March, the end of March, and harvested by the end of June. Then plant the second crop in the beginning of July, harvesting in October. They have to have a really good cooler, as the first crop being harvested at the end of June, we plant mini tubers in the beginning of June. So it's almost a year of storage, and that actually has been gone very well, but can be dependent on variety. Certain varieties do not like to be stored 11 months. They don't grow very good. We had to learn that the hard way once. Big challenge for us as seed grower is in December, we start planning for greenhouses. We have to order our plants in December. So having said that, the tricky part would be that we have to guess the market, what it'll be in 5 years from there. It'll take 5 years between a greenhouse crop and a commercial crop. So we have to estimate what are the processors and what are the fresh producers want in 5 years from now. That's the amount of plants that we put in our greenhouse. So that can be very tricky. What we usually do, we usually keep be a little bit on the high side, and if needed, we'll sell some higher generation into a commercial crop. So we will, of course, won't get paid for that necessarily, but at least we'll have enough to supply our customers. Another tricky part to figure out how much seed we would need to plant in the greenhouse is really the difference in varieties is huge, and it takes a few years to figure that out. As you can see in the presentation here, we have varieties that would yield about 85 pounds of E2 seed per mini tuber, but also varieties that only yield 32 pounds per mini tuber as an E2. So it takes a few years to figure that out, and that's a big challenge to come up with the number that we put in the greenhouse. Here you can see my sister's greenhouse. They plant everything in 2x4 trays, plastic trays off the ground, especially for the first crop, as it can be still pretty cold. We are in Alberta, so it can be pretty cold in March. We use drip line watering for an even distribution of water in the greenhouse and not giving the water on top of the plants. On the right side there, you can see some of the mini tubers that we plant. All our mini tubers are being done by piece. Lots of places they're trying to sell mini tubers per pound. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Sometimes there's only 20 tubers in a pound, and sometimes we have 50 tubers in a pound. So it makes it very hard for us as seed grower to estimate how many E3 seed we're going to be producing out of those mini tubers. So planting, we plant since 3 years now our mini tubers on beds. They are 5-foot beds with 3 rows in each bed. Our main reason why we're planting our mini tubers in beds now is pure. We get a more even size profile coming out of the mini tubers. There's always a pretty various amount of sizes in the mini tubers. You have mini tubers that may be only 1 centimeter diameter, and some of them 3. So we plant the little ones in the middle row so that they basically kind of get suffocated a little bit by the bigger plants. That way they don't produce really big tubers, because one small one usually only produces 1 or 2 new tubers, and they usually get really big. So far in the past 3 years, we've been very successful in getting a fairly even size out of it, which in my opinion moves on to other generations to get an even size. Another plan for us with the beds is putting drip tape irrigation in there for the near future. Right now, we just irrigate by gun on our mini tubers, and that's pretty much the only irrigation we do. We're all on dry land here. We do have high organic matter soil, so it holds our moisture really well. But We can do a little bit of other irrigation, but only out of a few little dugouts, and that's about it. So it's mainly dryland. To give an example on our mini tuber field, because of the regulations of CFIA, we have to keep a buffer in between varieties. That way, we use about 8 acres of land and only plant about 4.5 acres of potatoes. So it's a lot of wasted land. Personal opinion on that for me is that I don't think it's necessary, depending on what kind of harvest equipment you use. But that's something that Chris and I can discuss maybe one day. Anyway, our main crop, we plant everything whole on our farm. There is no cutting. We plant everything with a 4-row structural planter, which is capable of planting between 2 and 10 ounce tubers. Even a 12-ounce tuber in there is no problem. Reason why we plant whole is just pure for disease spreading. I think it's the cleanest way of growing seed, and I think it's for seed the only way to keep it from disease. Our row spacing here is 36-inch rows, and our plant spacing is anywhere between 7.5 and 9 inches, depending on the size profile of the seed, and of course varieties. Some varieties will set 15 tubers and some only 10, so we change our spacing because of that. Because of whole planting, we are planting quite a bit of tons per acre. We're about 4,400 weight on average, but if the seed is a little bit bigger, it's right away 5,500 weights per acre. Just a little overview of our planting. We, on the left, we plant our whole seed with that structural planter. We add liquid nitrogen in with planting, fungicides and insecticides. And we plant directly into hills. We use a power hiller to get the land ready. All our land is mostly plowed in the fall and only power hill in the spring and plant. On the right side, you can see our planting with the 3 rows in a bed of the mini tubers. So in the summer, after planting, we power hill our whole crop, and we bed shape our mini tubers again. It's mainly for weed control, but also to get a bigger hill to protect us from frost. And some of the varieties set very heavy, so we need a pretty good hill to keep them in there. Of course, then it's the summer is our herbicide and fungicide and insecticide sprays. Everything is done foliar sprays. We use tram lines in our crop. This way, we do the least amount of damage to our potato plants, and we can get in when we have to get in. There are times that it gets a bit wet, and if we don't have the tram lines, we would do a lot of damage to the crop. We can use plane or helicopter here, which I had to use last year because it was really even too wet for tram lines. But this way we can use big tires and able to go in when it's a little on the damp side and make a good plan of spraying. We're pretty fortunate in Alberta. We got very low numbers of aphids. Late blight is not really a big issue either, so our spraying intervals are quite lengthy, so we don't have to get in too often. But we still got to stay on top of it. Some people might think with your tram lines you'll lose a lot of land. Yeah, we are. We lose about 5% with tram lines, but the rows on either side of the tram lines are also yielding quite a bit better than any of the other rows. So I personally only think it's about 2% loss that we have that way. And with harvest, we don't have any issues with lumps because of sprayer tracks as we use the tram lines. In the summer, of course, we check often monitor for aphids. Every week we have sticky cards that we send in that get checked what kind of aphids are around. I think for us, for seed growers, that's one of our biggest challenge, keeping the aphids out of it. Lucky in Alberta, our aphids don't show up usually until late July and August. so we don't have to spray too often for it. Also, roguing in the summer falls back to what Chris is saying. We get 2 field inspections by CFIA. So we try to go through our crop before the first inspection and have everything rogued, pulled out anything that we think is not right. And then we do that again before the second inspection. We do focus a lot on our high generation seed so that it's easier to rogue later on when it's a lower generation and more acres. So here, just see on the left the hilling of the crop, and usually actually only about 4 days later they'll start popping out. As you can see on the right, that I would say is about a good 10 days after hilling is what it'll look like. Little aerial example of our fields. As you can see, a lot of different varieties there, a lot of different plots. On the left picture, there's our mini tuber field from a few years ago when we didn't do beds yet, but you can see all the buffers in between. We try to keep those clean and weed free. I do know in some areas they're seeding those to have a complete green area. I'd love to do that part, but the weeds present here in Alberta is very high with our high organic matter. So it's pretty tough to keep the weeds out of it that way too. So we decide to keep it black, as most of our people here in Alberta do. Also on the right picture, you can see all our different plots. One of the drawings that we have to send to CFIA to show them where all the fields is. So for inspection, it's easier for them to find it. So in the fall, we top kill all our potatoes at least 3 weeks before our harvest. We like skin set. Some varieties, I think you can get away with not getting necessarily a skin set, but I preferably have full skin set before harvest. We want to be done harvest by October 1st, as our risk is just getting too high here with frost. So we top kill based on size, but if it's get a little bit tight for timing, we top kill by time, and we just got to be done at a certain point. We top kill them by a foliar top kill spray, or we shred and spray in one pass. It usually gets us a little bit quicker kill, but if we get frost early in the season, having the whole top still on it definitely saves us from 2 or 3 degrees of frost. We usually have to go about 2 to 4 times to get a good kill, depending on variety and year. If we have a lot of moisture, then sometimes the plants are a little bit too green yet with killing, and we need an extra shot. And varieties is really big difference too. We harvest our main crop with a 4-row self-propelled harvester. It has a bunker on it, which really works really good for us with some of the small plots. And our fields are not all square and perfect either. Some areas have very short rows. This way we can hold about 7 or 8 ton in our harvester, and makes the harvest go a whole lot quicker. We use a complete separate harvester for our mini tuber crop, or our pre-elite crop, I should say. We use a 2-row Grammy machine for that we transformed into be able to dig the beds. During harvest, we sample our potatoes for BRR testing. Everything that leaves our farm is BRR tested. E1 class, you don't have to, but I think for our own benefit and security, we test every lot that leaves our farm. We use a post-harvest test, mainly Hawaii if we can. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we couldn't last year, but hope to be back in Hawaii right away. And we do a lot of lab testing too. I prefer both. It becomes a little bit costly, but I think a grow out gives you a really good indication of diseases where you're not necessarily be testing for in a lab. In a lab, it's only going to get tested for what you ask it to be tested for. In a visual, you might see something that is a little unusual, and then you can start testing for things and know what's going on in your seed lots. We got 3 storages on our farm. We store 75% of our lots in boxes. Each box holds about 3,300 pounds. Because of all the lots, it's pretty much the only way to do it. And we have one bulk storage where we store big varieties in. One big disadvantage of a box storage is that the box storage is never empty. The boxes might be empty, but the storage is always full. One bonus with the bulk storage, when it's empty, it's empty. So that's one of the reasons why we have one bulk storage and the rest all in boxes. Nothing gets shipped in the boxes. Everything gets, only the boxes will never leave the farm here. Will always stay here and always stays indoor also. We use ventilation system specialized from Europe. I think they're more specialized in box storages. We got 3 room ventilation, what they call, which is just circulating of air, all climatized. And then we have one suction system where we're a little bit more in control of if there's a problem lot or frost or rot or you name it. And then our bulk storage is just pushing air through pipes like a normal North American style storage. You can see our harvest. We use the 4-row harvester with shredder in the front and then a hopper. We use 2 trucks and 2 wagons behind tractors to haul our crop home, where we put them at home here in the boxes. We use about 4 or 5 people grading at harvest. We try to get our crop in the boxes as clean as possible, so it would save us a little bit with shipping. We right after harvest, we turn around and start shipping. We have some areas where we ship seed to very early in the season. And so it's pretty much a complete turnaround for us. As soon as we're done harvest, we'll turn things around and we'll ship them out again. About 40% of our crop will go to the US, pretty much from Florida to California and from California, Idaho, Washington, you name it. And 6% stays in Canada. It's pretty much in every province. We ship quite a bit to the east, to New Brunswick and P.E.I. Also, BC is a very big shipping for us. Most of our seed is being shipped in tote bags, and a third will be in bulk. All the bulk will be mostly going to southern Alberta, so stays in our own province. All the other seed is pretty much all shipped in tote bags. So I think it's pretty much the best way of shipping seed, especially in cooling containers and trucks. Potatoes are never being touched the ground or the walls or anything like that, and it's a very gentle way of shipping. And the winter is then always the time that I go to Holland together with our salesman from Edmonton Potato Growers and also the guys from HZPC, where we meet up in Holland to see the new varieties. We also visit the other breeders where we also grow some varieties for. A couple of big breeders over there would be Solanum, IPM, and Meyer. So our grading, on the left you can kind of see our grading line. We dump our boxes in what we call a Euro tub. It'll take out with rollers, it'll take out the loose dirt and the small tubers. Then we have a little pre-grading area where we would take an odd rotten one out. Then it goes into an even flow tub with a big conveyor right up into the air to another pre-grading table where we have rock rollers in, where 1 or 2 people will be standing to get rocks out, get another rotten one out. Then it goes into the big shack there up in the air, where 2 people are in to do a final grade. The tubers all go over a rolling table, so the graders are able to see pretty much all the sides of the potatoes. And at that point, we don't want them to be very busy. They need to be really looking for the last ones that are in it. Then it goes back into our box filler, which is also our tote bag filler. On the left, you can kind of see right in the light there, one of our guys hanging a bag underneath the tote bag box, and that's how we fill our tote bags. You see our box storage on the left, and then our bulk storage on the right that we can use in the spring to get loads ready before they're being shipped. That's pretty much it for my presentation. You can see our farm online too, on YouTube on our Hookland Farms, if you want to see some stuff in action. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jake. Great job. Okay, so now it's time for the question and answer session. And if you have any questions that you haven't asked to Jake or Chris, please type those in the chat box and we will get to them. So we'll go for about 15 minutes. Okay, so my first question is from, and I'm going to apologize for butchering your name pronunciation, Saduk Safalu. And he's asking, or she is asking, what is the process of passing a crop during crop inspection? Can you pass a crop in the same category? Chris, do you have anything you want to say on that
one? Sure. I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll take a shot at what I think you mean. Whenever we do 2 field inspections, we're looking for certain diseases and freedom from any kind of foreign varieties and so on. So at each inspection, there's a pass or not. If it doesn't pass inspection, it can get downclassed all the way down or even out of the certification system entirely. So each time we go in there, there's a pass fail essentially. So once the results of one inspection happen, there's no going back. So you can't fail the first inspection and then pass the second. So and the reason we have 2 inspections is that throughout the season, different problems occur at different times or different diseases. So we have to go in more than once. So after each inspection, it's passed or failed, and that's field inspection. I would say though, as far as tuber inspection goes, you can regrade. So in that circumstance, you can if it didn't pass inspection, you could regrade, and as long as you meet the tolerances, you can get certification. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Chris. Jake, have you had any issues yourself in the past when it's come to you're getting your tests done when they come out to check your fields, just out of curiosity?
No, we haven't really had any issues. Luckily, I guess, really. Our disease levels here are so low, so it is very very tricky in that sense that sometimes you even question yourself a little bit if you find something what it really is, because we really don't see it very often. So we do use small little test kits if there's anything, but we've never had really any issues that stuff being downgraded because of diseases necessarily. I mean, blacklight can be an issue sometimes. There's lots of different stories on blacklight, I would say. Blacklight to me can be totally different. The one year you'll see it, the next year you won't. It's a very, very environmental disease, and that can be a little bit tricky here in Alberta because of our climate, really. But I've never had, luckily, the issue of stuff being downgraded.
That's good. Okay, I have a question from Deb Hart for Chris. When a domestic traceback takes place, how does CFIA track where an infected seed lot was shipped from?
Whenever the grower applies for seed certification, whenever their application, every they have to declare everything they've planted on their farm, and they have to list every certification number for each seed source. So that certification number will tell us every lot that they planted on their farm, and that's how if there's an investigation, let's say there's a disease outbreak on that farm, we would look at all of the seed on that farm and where they got seed to try and figure out where the disease came from. So we would look at the certification number, because every lot on the farm needs to have a certification number that we can trace back.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, this question is for Jake. It's from Mark Van Ostrom. Did you increase seed spacing when you switched to bed planting?
No, we did not, Mark. We're actually planting at about 7-inch spacing. I didn't increase that in the sense that I wanted to keep my seeds smaller. So I keep the population up quite high. We do see that we're needing a little bit longer time. So usually when we plant our mini tubers beginning of June, we were able to harvest those usually second week of September. That is pushed back to a third to sometimes fourth week of September. So I'm trying to plant them a little bit earlier now, if the weather permits. Not like this year; it was still freezing in the middle of May. So preferably, I would like to plant them in the middle of May and have them again harvested before the middle of September.
Thank you. And here's another question from Sadiq, and this one's for you again there, Jake. He's asking, what is your average seed yield per hectare? And of course, I know we use per acre mainly here in North America, so answer whichever one you feel like there, Jake.
Well, I saw the question, so I calculated that quick for you. So it really varies here in Alberta. Our average on the farm is anywhere between 40 and 50 ton per hectare. We can get some serious weather here. So we can either get really, really dry and then it'll drop down to 40. Or a hailstorm could really bring us down to 40. But so I would say on average, we would hit about 45 ton per hectare.
Thank you. And thanks for doing that calculation. I really appreciate it. And I have another question for you from Anne McPhail. She's asking, do you use any seed from Canadian breeders? And what are you looking for when you select the seed you're going to plant?
We do. Now with Edmonton potato growers, we are looking at that very closely. They have a few varieties in our program now that are from North American breeders. I do have some also, a little bit from PVMI. What are we looking for? I'm looking for a lot for, if it's a table potato, of course, shape, yield, color is a big deal, but resistances, which I think for me becomes very important for the future, especially I think nematodes. I think the North American breeding is not really focused on that too much, but I think it's going to come. And it might be 5 years, might be 10 years, might be 20 years, I don't know. But I think it's going to be something in certain areas where that could be very important for the future.
Thank you. And I have another question from Mark Van Ostrom for you there, Jake. He's asking if you have any experience with gilbertic. I'm not going to pronounce it. Yes, that
word. Yeah, Mark, I'm actually doing a little bit of experiences with gibberellic acid. Not in the mini tuber side of things, but I have a few varieties that are setting very poorly, and we've been trying with that. I'm not sure on it yet. I do what we've seen in some of the tests that we did with it. We did get a huge increase in set, absolutely. But for roguing, it's a disaster. The plants look very sick. And at first I was kind of shocked. I thought I killed them, but that becomes a little bit tricky. And I know the amount of gibberellic acid can vary that way too, but we are testing a little bit with that, but don't want to do it too much.
Thank you. And now I have a question from Manon Jilbin, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. How do you manage your fertilizer program there, Jake?
We use an agronomist that helps us to look at our crops. Can be also tricky here because of dry land, but he's done an amazing job for us to manage all our varieties, because every variety is differently. So I've just done top dressing, for instance, yesterday. With some of the varieties, I will almost need double the nitrogen than some of the other varieties. So that is a little bit tricky by us to do that with so many lots and so many different plots. But we are set up to do it separately per variety.
Thank you, Jake, and thanks, Chris. Okay, well, that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank our speakers once again, Christopher and Jake. You guys did a great job. And also, once again, I would love to thank our sponsors, BASF and McCain, for making this webinar possible. And a big thank you goes out to everyone for participating. I hope you have found this information valuable. Again, a recording of this webinar will be made available on spudsmart.com shortly. And thanks again, and we hope you have a wonderful day.